Okay, good afternoon, our lovely grade 12s. Welcome to today's subject lesson, Mathematical Literacy. My name is Mampani Gikana. This lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Siboney Discovery Center and broadcast by Pakama Research Development. Okay, grade 12s. As you know, you can see that time flies. We are now in the 8th week since the schools reopened. So you can see that indeed time flies. Now, as you are interacting with your educators at school level, you should be aware that we are now in the 8th week, and then that is the week that is, according to the ATP, you're supposed to be busy with data handling. So actually, this is the 3rd week of data handling. You should have started with that. So today, I'm going to do data handling with you, boys and girls. So please take note that if you've got any question, you are welcome to interact with us on WhatsApp number. The WhatsApp number is 064 748 8913. 064 748 8913. So during the course of the lesson, if you want to understand something, you are welcome to interact with us through that number. And then please take note that we'll only be able to answer the questions at the end of the lesson, unfortunately. Okay. Okay, now just a quick overview about the topics that we do in MathLit. Now, we know that in MathLit we are doing finance, we are doing data handling, probability, measurement, maps and plans, and other representations of physical world. So for today, we are going to look at data handling, of which data handling forms 25% of the assessment. It forms 25% of the examination. So that means across all the papers, paper 1 and paper 2, all in all, 25% it's data handling. So for today, we are going to focus on data handling. Okay, now it's very, very important that for each and every topic that we do, you must have some expectations. There are certain expectations. So like in data handling, at the end of the entire data handling, you should be able to define the terminologies used in developing questions, collecting and classifying data. And then you should be able to develop questions that require the collection of data. You should be able to use appropriate instruments to collect data. And then again, you should be able to classify the collected data as categorical or numerical. And then you should also be able to organize the collected data using tallies and frequency table. And then you should also be able to analyze and interpret the collected data. So boys and girls, some of you at your school, you might have already covered this section. So it's not a new thing to you. Now, most of the common terminologies that you're going to encounter, encounter during the course of data handling are the following. So the first one is biased question. So what do we mean by biased question? Remember, boys and girls, in MathLit, we do not actually expect a very long definition. Okay? As long as you can define any terminology with a couple of words and make sure that your terminology is relevant. So in other words, when you define any terminology, make sure that you don't make it very long and try to make it as relevant as possible. So for this one, I'm going to simplify the following terminologies. Like the first one, if we are dealing with data handling, here we've got biased question. Now, what do we mean by a biased question? So okay, now a biased question in simple terms, it's a question, I hope my handwriting is clear, a question that is phrased in such a way. Okay, let me just write it down here. My apologies for that. Okay, so a biased question is a question that is phrased in such a way that it influences the respondent's answer. Okay, let's say you are doing a research, boys and girls. Now, obviously, you have to come up with questions. You have to set questions for your research. But while you are busy doing a research, you for your question, you phrase your question in such a way that you phrase your question in such a way that you expect your respondent to give that answer. Okay, let's say, for instance, you want to run a tuck shop, and then from that tuck shop you want to know what types of drinks, what type of drinks your shoppers would buy, but you are only interested in certain drinks. So you ask your shoppers, like, would you prefer a fizzy drink in my tuck shop? So in other words, in your question already, you are leading the shopper to an answer. You expect that shopper to give you an answer of a fizzy drink. So in this case, we say a biased question is a question that is phrased in such a way that it influences the respondent's answer. In other words, there's already an answer in that question. So when we set up questions, we must just make sure that we don't come up with biased questions. Okay, then the next terminology there is categorical data. What do we mean by categorical data? Now, for categorical data, it's data that can be divided into groups. Data that can be divided into groups. Okay, now, like for instance, you are doing a research, then from that research you want to divide your respondents, the people that you are asking questions, you divide them into 8 groups. So you can check, okay, from the 6-year-old to the 12-year-old, and then again you say from 13 to 18, and then from there you say from 19 to 24, and so on. So in that case, you'll be categorizing. So you're categorizing your respondents. Okay, then for classified data, what do we mean when we say classified data? Now, when you classify data, you are actually organizing data. So you're organizing data into categories. So we have to make sure that when you classify data, you need to know that you are actually organizing data into categories. So for this one, okay, let me erase this so that I can be able to write. Okay, then for classified data, I say this one is when you organize data into categories. Okay, what do we mean by classified data? That means you organize data into categories. Okay, then from the two words data handling, we've got the word data. We also need to understand what do we mean by data. Now, data is simply an information that must be collected, to be analyzed. So you don't only collect the information, but you collect the information and then after that you analyze it. So information that must be collected to be analyzed. Okay, so that is data. Okay, then I think I skipped the continuous data by mistake. So let me go back to continuous data. Now, when we come to continuous data, remember when you collect information, that information is actually data. Now, continuous data is a specific type of data. Now, this is the information or data that can be collected by measuring. Continuous data can be collected by measuring. Okay, so collected by measuring. So I might be interested in all the learners' heights in a classroom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the height of each and every learner or each and every learner's weight. So that is the collection of data by measuring. So that one we call it a continuous data. Okay, and then I'm sorry for the writing. Let me erase this. Okay, then the next one is discrete data. Boys and girls, if you look at all these terminologies, you can see that on your screen, you will see that some of the terminologies are actually related. You will see with the colors there. So you can see continuous data and discrete data. Now for discrete data, remember continuous data we said is the collection of information by measuring, and then discrete is the collection of information by counting. If I want to know how many learners are in your school, then I'm going to count. If I want to know how many educators are in your school, I'll have to count. If I want to know how many tables and how many chairs are in your school, I'll have to count. So that one is a discrete data. So discrete data is a collection of information or data by counting. Okay, collection of information by counting. Right, then we've got an experiment. So for experiment, now what do we mean by experiment? Experiment is the collection of information by testing. So this one is the collection of method through, the collection of information by doing tests. So I'm going to sorry about, okay, so that one experiment, it's collection of information or data by testing or doing tests. Okay, then the next one is frequency table. What do you mean by frequency table? Now, frequency table is that table that lists the items. So you are busy doing a research and you want to know who of the learners in your school would prefer fizzy drinks or would prefer water or would prefer juice. So you're doing your research. Then from there, you have to come up with a frequency table. Now, what is a frequency table? A frequency table, it's a table that lists items. You're going to list your items and then you're going to indicate how many times does each item appear. How many times does each item appear? For instance, if you are doing your research and then you are asking your friends, and then your friends would give you the type of drinks that they would prefer. And then from there, you indicate that learner number one, fizzy drink. Learner number two, water, and so on and so on. So you are listing each and every item. Then from there, you're going to check how many learners or how many of your friends prefer fizzy drink, water, or juice. So this one is frequency table. It's a table that lists items, and also indicate the number of times the item occurs. The number of times the item occurs. Okay, frequency table, the table that lists items and also indicate the number of times the item occurs. So that is a frequency table. Then the next one is interview. Okay, the next one is interview. Then what do we mean by interview? So interview is face-to-face, with a person for questioning. With a person for questioning. Okay, so you'll be interviewing a person there. So interview, it's when you interact with a person face to face and then you ask questions. Okay, then the next one is mean. Okay, how do you calculate mean? So what do you understand the definition of a mean? Now mean is when you take the sum of values, and then divided by the number of values. Okay, the sum of values divided by the number of values. Remember, in this case, boys and girls, they don't need a formula, but they need a definition. So a definition, everything must be in words. Okay, and then the next one is measure of central tendency. What do you mean by that? So in simple terms, measure of central tendency is a value that shows the position of data. Okay, so it's a value that shows the position of data. So measures of central tendency, a value that shows the position of data. So like for instance, we've got mean, median, and mode. Mean, median, and mode. Those are types of measures of central tendency. Okay, then we've got again measure of spread. Measure of spread, what do we mean by that? So measure of spread, this one is the values that give an indication of how data is spread. The value that give an indication of how a data is spread. So that is measure of the value that shows or that gives an indication of that gives an indication of how data is spread. Okay, the value that gives an indication of how data is spread. So in grade 12s, we'll be referring to range and interquartile range. Okay, so the next one is mode. Now the definition for mode is if you are given a list of values, the value that appears the most. Okay, no, I skip the median. Okay, this one is the measure of spread, the value that gives an indication of how data is spread. Now the next one is median. Now median is the middlemost value. The middlemost value. So median is the middlemost value of arranged. Okay, the middlemost value, the middlemost value of arranged data. Now arranged, when we come to median, it can either be from ascending, in ascending order, that means from the lowest to the highest. So the arranged data can be in ascending order, that is from down, that is from the lowest value to the highest value, from the smallest value to the biggest value. So that is ascending order. Ascending order, it means now they are going up for up, and then, or it can be in descending order, D for down. So just remember that is the median. But we know that it's very common that we would prefer to write them in ascending order than the descending order, but it doesn't matter. Okay, then we've got mode. Okay, then mode is the value that appears the most. Okay, mode is the value that appears the most. The value that appears the most. In a set of data. Okay, so the value that appears the most in a set of data. So if you are given a list of values, and then from that list of values you can check which value appears the most. And remember, it's also possible that you can have more than one value as the mode. If you've got, let's say, two numbers that appear, let's say, 5 times, both of them appear 5 times, and that is the highest number, then that means you're going to have two modes there. Okay. Then the next one is numerical data. What do we mean by numerical data? That is, numerical data is the data that is in the form of numbers. Numerical data is data or an information that is in the form of numbers. That is numerical data. Data that is in the form of numbers. Okay, that is the definition for numerical data. Okay, then the next one is observation. Okay, what do we mean when we say observation? So now for observation, it's the collection of data by watching. Okay, collection of data by watching. Okay, let's say they want to construct, let's say, a road, okay, or highway, and then the first thing that they need to check is how many cars are going to travel through that road. Okay, how many cars are going to travel through that road? So it means what they're going to do, they're going to send a researcher to go and do some observation. In other words, the researcher is going to stand somewhere in a corner and watch all the cars that will be passing by. So at the end of the day, the researcher can give a report and say, so many number of cars or so many number of trucks are passing there every day, buses, private cars, okay, buggies, and so on and so on. So that person will be doing an observation. So for the observation is the data that is collected in the form of that one is observation. So it's the collection of data by watching the behavior. Okay, then the next one is an outlier. Okay, this is another way that you're gonna encounter. So what do we mean by an outlier? Okay, let's say in a classroom you are writing a test, okay, and then when you are writing a test you receive your results, okay, but your educator wants to analyze the results. So the educator will check your results. So to see whether the class is doing well, they must be consistent. So in other words, we mustn't have that one learner who is doing too good and the other one who is doing too bad. So the marks of the learners must be almost the same. Okay, so if we have a learner, let's say most of the marks are in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, but all of a sudden there's that learner who got maybe 2. Okay, so and then you can see that 2% compared to the other percentages, it's very, very low. So we say that number is an outlier. Okay, and then let's say most of the learners are getting marks in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, then all of a sudden there's that learner who got a mark in the 90s. So you can see the mark is very high compared to the other learners. So in that case, we say that number is an outlier. So what do we mean by an outlier? An outlier is the value that is too small or too big, okay, compared to the other values. Okay, an outlier is a value that is too small or too big compared to the other values. So that one is an outlier. Okay, so outlier, it's value that is too big, that is too small, or big, or too big compared to the other values. Okay, the value that is too small or too big compared to the other values. Right, then the next one, organized data. Okay, organized data. Okay, so organized data, it's when you classify data into categories. So it's when you classify data into categories. Okay, so when you organize data, you are actually classifying data into categories. Right, then the next one is population. What do we mean by population? Obviously, boys and girls, if you have to do a research, you need to have your own target. Who are you going to interview? Who are you going to do a survey with? Okay, so it's very, very important. You need to have your target group. So let's say, for instance, like if I take you back to that example of maybe you want to open a tuck shop, or your father or your mother wants to open a tuck shop in the school. They want to run a tuck shop in that school or in your own school. They have to do a research about the items that they're going to sell to the learners. So it means now their target will be the learners for a research. They have to do a survey, they have to do a research by maybe interviewing the learners. Okay, now let's say a school has got about 1,500 learners. Would it be practical to go and interview each and every learner or do a survey with each and every learner? No, it might take forever. So in that case, we say if you are going to interview all the learners in the school, then that will be a population, because you'll be interviewing everyone. Okay, so we'll say all the learners in the school will now be a population, because it's each and every learner that must be interviewed. So now population, it simply refers to the whole group of data. Okay, it refers to the whole group of data when you want to do a research. Okay, then, so for this one, it's a whole group for research. Okay, so you're going to interview the whole group. Okay, then the next one is questionnaire. So questionnaire, obviously when you do a research, you must have questions. Now questionnaire, you can simply say it's a list of written questions with choice of answers. Okay, it's a set, it's a list of, it's a set of written questions, sorry. It's a set of written questions with possible answers. Okay, with possible answers, a set of written questions with possible answers, or a choice of answers. Okay, then range. Okay, now with the range, it's the difference. Remember, in terms of calculation, when we say difference, is where you take a big number, you subtract a small number. So for this one, we say Range is difference between the highest value and the lowest value. The difference between the highest value and the lowest value. In simple, you can say the difference between maximum and minimum. Okay? Or the difference between the biggest value and the smallest value. However way you understand it better. Okay, then the next one, it's representing data. So what do we mean by representing data? So when we represent data, it's we collect information. That is where you collect the information and present it in the form of graphs. Okay, you collect the information and present it in the form of graphs. So presenting data is when we collect information, and then from the collected information, we present it in the form of graphs. Okay, so representing data, it's collect information and present it in the form of graphs. Okay. Then the next one is sample. You can see the color for sample and population. All right. Remember, for population, I said if you want to do a research in a school, you'll have to interview each and every learner or each and every person in the school. Now, for a sample, if let's say, for instance, you've got grade 8 to grade 12, you've got learners from grade 8 to grade 12, now you want to sample. Obviously, it would not be fair that if you want to sell something at a tuck shop, then you're only going to ask the grade 8 or you're only going to ask the grade 9s. Okay, but because what the grade 8 would prefer might not be the same as what the grade 12s would prefer. So you need to be careful there. So it means we must interview all the grades from grade 8 until grade 12. Okay, but for a sample, you can just select one class of grade 8, you select one class of grade 9, you select one class of grade 10, one class for grade 11, and one class for grade 12. And then you know that all the grades are represented. Okay, so all the grades would be represented, but you don't necessarily have to interview all the learners in grade 8, because if maybe there's about 5 or 6 classes, you don't need to do that. You can just interview one class. You go to grade 9, you do the same thing. So we need to check that as well. So sample is when you interview only a fraction. So for a sample, it's only a fraction of a whole. So a fraction or selected number of a whole. Selected number of a whole, that will be a sample. Okay, then remember, boys and girls, in this case, we're just trying to make the definitions as simple as possible. Okay, so remember, I said what is important is however way you understand the terminology, please make sure that you answer it, but try to make it relevant and just use a couple of words. So one word only won't be enough, or 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, maybe 5 words will be enough. Okay. Then the next one is summarizing data. Okay. Now, what do we mean when we say summarize data? Okay, you have done your research, you've got the information, now you want to interpret. So now you need to summarize it. In summarizing data, it means we just simplify the information. We simplify the data for interpretation. Okay, you simplify the data so that someone can easily interpret that information. So summarizing data is simplify data for interpretation. Okay, simplify data for interpretation, or simplify the data to be interpreted. Okay, so that is summarizing data. Then we've got a survey. Okay, survey. Okay, now when you do a survey, you are again going to collect information, but in this case, you collect the information through investigation. Okay, so that one is collect information through investigation. Collect information through investigation. Collect information through investigation. Or by doing investigation. Sorry, it must be for survey. Okay, then we've got the last one is unbiased question. If you think about biased question, okay, so biased obviously is the opposite of unbiased, or unbiased is the opposite of biased. So we said the biased question, if you set a biased question, it means you are actually leading your respondents, the people who are going to answer the question, you are actually leading them to an answer. In other words, you don't give them many options. So for this one, it's now going to be the opposite. So unbiased, it means this one, you don't lead them to a question. You let them come up with their own answer. Okay, so for this one, it's unbiased question. It avoids leading answers. And it is based on facts. Okay, and it is based on facts. Okay, boys and girls will get to more clarity about this as we get along with our lesson. Okay, so for now, let's just take 1 minute break. Okay, and then I'll see you just after a minute. All right, boys and girls, welcome back. We are continuing with our lesson. Please remember to interact with us on 064 748 8913. 064 748 8913. If you want to leave some comments or you've got some questions, so please make sure that you send your messages or your questions to that number. Okay, so unfortunately the questions will be attended later on, but thank you very much for watching. Even if you don't have any questions, you're welcome to let us know that you are actually watching. Okay, now we are going back to our data handling stages. Now we need to understand what is data handling. Okay, Now, in data handling, we are dealing with 5 main stages. So this is everything that must be covered in data handling. So we've got developing questions. Okay, we've got collecting data, which is the second one. We've got the third one, which is classifying and organizing data. Classifying and organizing data is one thing. And then summarizing data, okay? And then that is the fourth one. And then the last one is representing data. So obviously, boys and girls, when you do a research, this is a cycle that must be followed. This is what must be done. Obviously, you must have questions. You need to develop questions. And after developing questions, you need to go and interview the people. That means you'll be collecting the data. And then after collecting the data, you'll be having that data or you'll be having that information. Now you need to classify and organize it. You need to sort it. And then after that, you're going to summarize it. You're going to make it simple. And then after summarizing it or making it simple, then you now represent it in the form of graphs. Okay, so there you've got the picture. When does analysis and interpretation of data occur? Okay, remember, after all those 5 stages, we still have to analyze and interpret. We need to analyze and interpret. So they say, when does analysis and interpretation of data occur? So you don't necessarily have to wait up until the end to analyze or interpret. They say interpretation of data should occur at every stage of cycle. So that means when you develop questions, you must be able to interpret your questions. Okay? And then okay, so remember the stages. So developing questions, collecting data is going to be the second step. And then after collecting the information, you now have to classify and organize it. And then from there, you summarize it and represent the data in the form of graphs. Okay, now in this cycle, all the steps are interconnected and interdependent. So in other words, one is connected to the other one, to anyone. Let's say developing questions, it's actually connected to summarizing data. And again, it's also interdependent to collecting data. So in this case, we say steps are interconnected and interdependent. There's no one of these that can go on its own. So we say every stage depends on the previous or impact on the next stage. Data handling is not a linear process. You can see here it's a cycle. It's not a straight line. Okay, now boys and girls, obviously when we come to developing questions, okay, now developing questions, as you can hear, questions. And then we can only see a question where there is what, when, who, how, when, and where, among some of them. Okay. Then they say phrasing of question determines the way in which data is collected, organized, and classified. So it means the way you phrase a question is very, very important, because in the end, it's going to determine how you collect and how you organize and also classify that information. Now, when you develop a question, identify the main question, followed by the sub-question. Now, here's an example. They say, this is the main question: how to improve your grade 12 results if you are underperforming. Let's say, for instance, how to improve your grade 12 results if you are underperforming, or your own results as an individual. Okay. Sub questions. Okay. What is the right style? What is the right learning style for you? Okay. And how to improve your memory? How to make learning more fun? Okay. So it's very, very important. So you've got the main questions, and then after that, you've got the sub questions. Right. And then we're now going to look at the biased and unbiased question. Okay, remember again, when you set questions, you need to be careful that your questions are not biased. Okay, they're supposed to be unbiased. So let us look at this. We're going to give an example. Then they say the following question was used in a survey. In the number of COVID-19 virus positive cases in Gauteng, the highest in South Africa in December 2021. Is the number of COVID-19 virus positive cases in Gauteng the highest in South Africa in December 2021? Okay, now you can see that in this, it's a question, but there's already a leading answer. Okay, then they say, is this a biased or unbiased question? As I've already indicated, I said there's a leading answer there. So they say this one is biased because the research question implies that Gauteng has the highest number of COVID-19 virus positives. So the way the question is phrased already is telling the respondent that Gauteng has got the highest number of cases. So therefore, for them, they can also respond by saying, yes, Gauteng has got the highest number of cases. So, but if you want to rephrase the question, then they say, okay, so this one can be rephrased. So you can see that in this phrase, there's no leading answer. They say which province. Then we've got 9 provinces. So it means people now will have to figure out which province. Which province in South Africa had the highest number of COVID-19 positive cases in December 21? Then the word Gauteng is not there, so people will be able to answer. So in that case, we have actually rephrased the question without a leading answer. Okay. So then the next part of our lesson, we look at data collection. Now, what do we mean by data collection? Data collection, it's a process of gathering and measuring information. So it's a process of gathering and measuring information. Okay, then how do we gather that information? How do we gather the information? They say through interviews, questionnaires and surveys, observation, experiments. Okay, I think we have already discussed this at the beginning of our lesson. So when you collect information, these are the methods. Okay, interview, questionnaires and surveys, observation and experiments. Okay, then we look at data collection methods. Interview. What do you mean by interview? Is when a person is asked questions and responds immediately. So in other words, you expect an answer at that time. So you'll be having a list of questions. Then from that list of questions, you expect the respondent or the person that you are interviewing to respond immediately. Okay, then questionnaire or survey is people complete a list of questions in writing. Okay, then remember, in terms of questionnaire, most people would not prefer to write. So you can just try to make it as simple as possible. Maybe choices, okay, or where they have to tick and so on, just to make it easier for them. Okay, then observation, getting information by observing participants' behavior. So boys and girls, it means in this case, we're actually going back to the terminologies. What I was doing at the beginning is I was trying to show you that when you come to definitions, you can actually define any terminology using your own weight. Okay, but just try to make sure that your definition is relevant. You try by all means to make it as relevant as possible. So these are some of the definitions. Observation is getting information by observing participants' behavior. And then we've got experiment, performs a scientific procedure, especially in a laboratory, to determine something or collect information. Okay, then we are going to look at the possible questions. Right, so for this one, it's a quick quiz. List the best instruments that can be used to collect the following data. So you've got an option from interview, questionnaire, survey, observation, and experiment. Okay, so we've got A, B, C, D, and E. So you have to check if A, is it an interview, is it a questionnaire, survey, observation, or experiment? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. So can I give you about 2 minutes? 2 minutes to quickly respond to those questions, just to indicate which instrument you're going to, or you can use, or that can be used for each question there. Okay, boys and girls, welcome back. I hope you have indicated your answers, your possible answers. So for A, reason why learners study maths lit, the reason why learners study maths lit. So the possible answer there is a survey or an interview. So survey or interview. And then B, the number of learners taking notes during a lesson. So that one can be done through observation. Okay, you don't have to interview anyone there. Okay, you don't have to do a survey. Number of learners taking notes during a lesson is an observation. Then C, how childhood trauma affected learners. How childhood trauma affected learners. So this one, it can be a survey. Survey would be the possible answer there. The number of boys wearing earrings in the classroom, of course, that can be done through observation. The number of learners or the number of boys wearing earrings in the classroom. The number of learners who want to become teachers. Okay, the number of learners who want to become teachers, that one can be a survey or interview. Survey or interview. Right, then the next one, data collection, population versus sample. Okay, now we're going back again. What is the difference between a population and a sample? As I explained from the beginning, in definition, we've got a population can be defined as an entire group of interest. For example, population of a school would be all learners, teachers, administrators, general workers, and parents. Okay, so if your interest is a school, you want to do a survey or a research in a school, your interest will be everyone in the school. Okay, then for a sample can be defined as a representative part of the population. For example, randomly selecting 5 learners per grade. All right, it's like when I said you can choose one grade. If in grade 8 you choose one class. If you've got A up until E, or you've got grade 8-1, 8-2, 8-3, then you just choose one class. Okay, or if you want to choose only 5 learners, any 5 learners in grade 8, and then you choose any 5 learners in grade 9, same thing grade 10, then you'll be sampling. So a sample can be defined as the representative part of population. Okay, then obviously after collecting the information, we need to classify and organize the data. So data can be categorical, okay, that is one way that it can be classified. So for this one, we say this one is usually done through observation, because you need to categorize this. Color, race, and gender. So you'll be categorizing into race, to color, or into gender. Okay, numerical data, and then that is quantitative data consisting of numerical values. Okay, quantitative data consisting of numerical values. So in other words, for quantitative, we're looking at the numbers. Then for an example, number of votes to choose a class rep. So let's say we are in, or we have to vote for a class rep, and there's about 20 learners in that class. Okay, then 11 they indicate yes, and then 9 indicate no. Okay, the number of votes to choose a class rep. So if 11 people are going to, or 11 learners are going to respond by saying yes, and then 9 of them say no. So there's the vote, there's the tally. Okay, now in terms of a tally, we know that we have to indicate tally in terms of lines. Okay, so it's vertical lines. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then when it's more than 4, the fifth one will always be in a horizontal line. Okay, let us look at yes. Yes, it's 11. So 11, it means it's 1. Okay. So we've got 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's 6, 7, 8, 9. Then it's 10. Then it's 11. Okay, so if it's written like 4 lines, 4 vertical lines, and a horizontal line, that will give us a group of 5. So that is 5, and that is 10, and that is 11. And then for no, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's 5, and then it's 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's it. 4 lines only, so that one is a group of 5, and 4 lines, that will give us 9. Okay, then okay, still on classifying and organizing data. Remember, this one, the classifying and organizing data is divided into categorical and quantitative. And then for quantitative, we've got discrete and we've got continuous. As we explained before, discrete is a data that is collected through counting or by counting, and then continuous is collected by measuring. So categorical is qualitative, and then quantitative or numerical is quantitative. Okay, then for this one, we are explaining again classifying and organizing data. So the numerical data, as we said, it is the data that is based on count, and then this can be presented on a bar graph. That is the discrete data. Then we've got continuous. Continuous is the one with intervals, can be obtained through measuring, and it is data within a range. Then histogram will be the best to represent that information. Okay. Okay, then for classifying and organizing data, again, is collecting data can be grouped using intervals, frequency tables, and tallies. For example, grade 11 maths lit teacher collected the results from 15 assignments out of 50. Okay, now those are the results. There's 15 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There now we want to organize, classify and organize the data. So in this case, we are classifying. Okay, now we is one number. So it's 8 is 1, then 19 years, and then let's check. We don't have any number, so this one is just 2. The frequency is 2. Okay, then from 20 to 29, boys and girls, it's easier as you count. Okay, after counting, then you need to cancel those numbers. Okay, just to make it easier for you to count again. Okay, then we've got 20 to 29. We've got 20, so it's 1, and then it's 21 years, and then it's 22 years, and then it's 22 again years, so it's 4, and then we've got 26 years. Okay, and then we've got 28 years. So the numbers from 20 to 29, we've got 6 of them. Right, so we've got 6 of them, so this will be 6. Okay, then the next one is 30 to 39, from 30 to 39. So let's check, we've got 32 years, we've got 35 years, and then we don't have another number from 30 to 39, so this will give us 2. Right, and then the last interval, we've got 40 to 49, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's 4. Okay, now boys and girls, you now need to check because the original values, they were 15. So after indicating the information in the frequency table, the number, the total of frequency. Okay, so if it's not 15, it means you made a mistake somewhere instead of you made a mistake somewhere in terms of counting. Right. So let's see, we've got 3 and we've got 9, and then it's 9 plus 2, it's 11 plus 4, then it's 15. So this must give us 15. And it is 15. If it had to give us a different number there, we would know that something is not correct. Okay, then this is how we complete our frequency table. Okay. Okay, then another activity is okay. Okay, for activity 1.1, an Audi salesperson ordered cars from their plant in Germany. The table below shows the number of cars they received. Use the information provided to construct a tally table for S3. Okay, got different models there. You've got A3, A4, you've got S3, Q7, and R8. Okay, but for the table, we need to complete the data for S3. Okay, now we need to check. Here you've got red, there's 4 of them, and then you've got white, there's 3 of them, you've got silver, 5, and you've got black, 6. So all in all, we say 4 plus 3 is 7, 7 plus 5 is 12, and 12 plus 6 is 18. So 4 plus 3, 7 plus 5, 12, and then 6, 18. So in the end, when we add there, we must still get 18. So we've got the frequencies already. So we can just complete the frequencies. Red is 4, then it's 3, then it's 5, and then it's 6. However, you can still start with the tallies, doesn't matter. Then now we need to complete the tallies. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's 1, 2, 3, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Total 4 plus 3, 7 plus 5, 12, then it must be 18. Okay, and that is how we complete the frequency table. Okay, then we're going to look at another activity. Okay, the grouped frequency table alongside shows the height of plants in different categories. Okay, so let me go back. Okay, the grouped frequency table alongside shows the height of plants in different categories. So it means you have to refer to the table to get or to answer the questions. How many plants were measured altogether? Okay. How many plants are less than 20 millimeters? That is B. How many plants are more than 24 millimeters? And then what percentage of plants are below 25 millimeters? Okay. Let's see. A is how many plants were measured altogether? From 10 to 14, that range, there were 3 of them. From 15 to 19, there were 6. 20 to 24, 7. 25 to 29, 5. And 30 to 34, 4. Okay, so when we add there, it's 3 plus 6, it's 9. 9 plus 7, it's 16. 16 plus 5 is 21. 21 plus 4 is 25. Okay, so that is 25. Okay, we have to follow the questions. Okay, then B, they say how many plants are less than 20 millimeters? Okay, now if you check in the first row, it's all the plants from 10 to 14. In the second row, 15 to 19. In the third row, 20 to 24. And then the fourth, 25 to 29. And then the fifth one is 30 to 34. Right. So B, how many plants are less than 20 millimeters? So less than 20 millimeters, it must be all the plants in the second row and also the first row. It must be all the plants in the second row and the first row. So how many are they? So it's 3 plus 6. So for this one, it's 3 plus 6, then it's 9. Oh no, sorry, it must be the answer for B. 3 plus 6, then it's 9. Then, so for 1.28 must be 25. Then for C, how many plants are more than 24 millimeters? This one, this is 10 to 14, 15 to 20 to 19, 20 to 24. Right, then it means more than 24, more than. So more than 24, it means all the plants from 25. So 25, to 29, 30 to 34. So that will be 5 plus 4, it's 9. 5 plus 4 is also 9. Okay, then D, what percentage of plants are below 25 millimeters? Okay, what percentage of plants? So to get to a percentage, we must first get a number. Okay, if there are 35 learners in a classroom and 15 are boys, 20 are girls, then if I want to know the percentage of girls, I'll take the number of girls, and then I divide it by the total number of learners, the total number of boys and girls. Okay, if they say what percentage of girls, okay, so in other words, girls form what percentage of the class. So I'll take the number of girls, I divide by the total number of boys and girls, or all the learners. So this one is what percentage of plants are below 25. Below 25, it means it's going to be in row 3, row 2, row 1. So it's 7 plus 6 is 13, and 13 plus 3. Okay, so it's 7 plus 6, 13 plus 3, that will give us 16. So this will be 16 first the fraction over the total. So the total we said is 25. Remember at number 1.2a. But they say what percentage? So we're looking for a percentage. So we take this, we multiply by 100%. Okay, if you use your calculator there, 16 over 25. 16 over 25. And then you multiply by 100, you get 64. So it's 64%. So those are the answers of 1.2. Okay, then the next question is, okay, so for this one, it's taken from, it's activity 2, taken from the final exam paper of 2021, that is paper 1. The questions alongside were taken from a company's information sheet. Study the information alongside and answer the questions that follow. A, identify the data collection instrument that was used. Okay, sorry about that. So identify the data collection instrument that was used to collect the information alongside. And then B is name the next step in the data cycle after the instrument has been completed and collected. So there you've got the questions. How many hours per day do you spend reading? How many books have you read in the last 16 weeks? How many books have you bought in the last 3 months? Were the books you bought hard copies or soft copies? Do you believe that we should pay 15% VAT on the book prices? There you are given a list of questions. Okay, and then you have to use them to answer these questions as well. Okay, just maybe 1 minute quickly to write down your answer. Just 1 minute, boys and girls. Okay, Welcome back, boys and girls. I hope you managed to write down the answers quickly. So 1A, identify the data collection instrument that was used to collect the information alongside. So this one can be a questionnaire or a survey. Questionnaire or a survey. So the answer there is questionnaire or a survey. Right. Name the next step in the data cycle after the instrument has been completed and collected. Remember, so this one they've already given you 2 steps. So it means step number 3, that is organizing data. So if you remember the data handling cycle, okay, so it means it must be organizing data. Right, and then next question, it's about this same questions. Okay, let me see. Okay, let me see. I didn't miss any question. Okay, boys and girls, this one we've done it. Okay, yeah. So this must be state whether the choices. Okay, state whether the choices given for D represent categorical or numerical. Okay, state whether the choices given for D represent categorical or numerical. So where's our D? The D is were the books you bought hard copies or soft copies. So that one has got nothing to do with numbers. So we are just categorizing. Okay, we're just grouping the books, either hard copies or soft copies. So that one will be our categorical. Okay. Right. Then the next question is give an example of a business that will find alongside data useful. Give an example of a business that will find the alongside data useful. Who would be more interested in these questions? Okay, so obviously it's about books. So the bookshop or library. Okay, okay. People who are running a library will also be interested. Okay, or find the information useful. So for this one, it's a bookshop. Okay, then next activity is the questions alongside were taken from a company's information sheet, same information as the previous one. Study the information alongside and answer the questions that follow. Is question E. Question E, which one is question E? That one, do you believe that we should pay 15% VAT on the book price? And then they say, is question E biased or unbiased question? Justify your answer. What do you think, boys and girls? Okay, remember we said if there's a question and there's already a leading answer. So in this case, when a person says, do you believe that we should pay 15% VAT on the book prices? Okay, so already you are leading these people to an answer. So this one will say it's a biased question. Okay, it's a biased question because already you are leading the interviewing or the respondents to an answer of the 15% VAT. So, or it's like you say, do you believe? Then obviously most of them might go with the word believe, and then they will respond by saying yes. Okay, then Okay, now, boys and girls, we have about 5 minutes, so we are almost at the end of our lesson. So this is just a background for our next lesson. Okay, so because we have actually came to the end of our lesson, so the next part of or the next section of data handling, it's summarizing data. Okay, now when we talk about summarizing data is when we summarize is we collect the data using measures of central tendency and measures of spread. So we're also going to analyze and interpret the summarized data. Okay. Okay. Then what do we mean by summarizing data? So when we summarize data, it's when we are collecting data by using measures of central tendency and spread. Then what do we mean by measure of central tendency? I think we spoke about this at the beginning of the lesson. Single value that shows a central position of a data. And we've got three types of them. We've got mean, we've got median, and we've got mode. Okay. Okay. So I just want to do this one as the last one of our show, because I don't actually want to go into details with this. This will actually be for the next lesson. But at the very same time, this is a revision of the grade 10 and grade 11 work. Okay, then for measures of central tendency, the first one is mean. We can say mean or average mean. Okay, now how do we calculate a mean? We say sum of values divided by the number of values, total number of values. Let's say, for instance, you obtain the following results for 7 subjects. So one subject is 70, the other one 62, 54, 60, 62, 82, and 58. All of them in percentages. Okay. Then they say calculate your mean. Calculate your mean. Then remember the formula is the sum. So you have to take 70, say plus 62, plus 54, plus 60, plus 62, plus 82, and then plus 58. Okay, we know that the values are given in percentages, but never mind the percentage sign. Now it's just a unit. Okay, so you know that in the end your answer must be in the form of a percentage. So these are the sum, and then from the sum you now have to add and divide by the number they are. So this is divided by 7. Okay, now if you use your calculator, you say 70 plus 62 plus 54 plus 60 plus 62 plus 82 plus 58. Then you get 448. Then over 7, and then in the end divided by 7, and then the answer is 64. Then remember, this is supposed to be 64%. So never mind the units as you do the calculations, but in the end you know that your answer must actually be in the form of a percentage. Okay, boys and girls, this will bring us to the end of our today's lesson. This one was just an introduction about summarizing data, but in our next lesson we are actually going to continue from what we left. So stay tuned for the next lesson, and make sure that you invite your friends, so that you can learn a lot from the lesson. Now, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for watching this lesson. Please remember to sanitize, wear your mask, maintain social distancing, and keep safe. See you next time. Goodbye.